to another Saturday Night Cinema. As always, I'm your host, Sawyer St. Sin. And you might be going, wow, Sawyer, that's some crazy makeup. Well, I was workshopping a look for a upcoming comic and toy expo that I'm going to. So stay tuned, for like some pictures of that. Maybe even a little bit of video from it. I don't know. It'll be like cell phone footage video if I do anything. Not promising anything. But maybe like a little cell phone footage. Maybe, if you're lucky. Anyways, tonight, be careful what you wish for and beware of the djinn. Yeah, that's right. We're talking Wishmaster tonight. Release date, September 19th, 1980. Oh my gosh, not 80, 97. 1997. Get ready for the Sawyer screw-ups that happen, all the time. Because even with notes, sometimes my brain goes a little like haywire. It happens. So our director is Robert Kurtzman. Some of you may know him. Some of you may not. He hasn't directed a lot of stuff. I think maybe 5 or 6 movies, somewhere around in there. But he is a very talented special effects artist. I mean, we're talking like Evil Dead 2, Phantasm 2, and a whole lot of other things. Y'all, I mean, his list is like 150 movies. So, I mean, I could go on, but I'm not going to. And our writer, the same writer who did Hellraiser 3 that we spoke about last week, Peter Atkins. And it was produced, of course, by the master himself, Wes Craven. So, I don't know why this movie, people just kind of, put it on the back burner, because I personally love it. It's great. The djinn, look is fantastic. I love that he doesn't really look like any other, genies that we see. He's just got a really fantastic look. And, his one-liners are, his one-liners are great. They're great. They're fantastic. Anywho, so our cast. I'm going to start off with our narrator because I love him dearly. You know him as the tall man. Yes, Mr. Angus Scrim narrated the beginning part, basically the definition of, the backstory definition of what a djinn is. Then we have Tammy Lauren, who plays Alexandria, our leading lady. Then we have Andrew Divoff as the djinn. You might recognize him as I don't know, every Russian bad guy ever. He is typecast into the bad guy, Russian role, which, is fine. He's fantastic as a bad guy. He's one of those that, you love to hate him type, character situations. Anywho. Then we have Ari Bark? Guys, he plays Zoroaster, I think is how you pronounce it. Anyways, he's the sorcerer of the Persian king back in the way beyond. Then I put these two in here because they're two of my favorite characters and you only see them for a minute. But the special effects on them, the makeup and the special effects are just fantastic. I love them. So we have Jake McKinnon, who is the Skeleton Man. He, we'll talk about him in a minute. And then we have Greg Funk as Snake Man. It's kind of obvious what he is, right? Snake Man. We have Richard Azed as the Persian king. Again, you really see him for just a little bit, but they're characters that tell the backstory, so I figured we should put them in here, right? Then we have our first cameo by someone in a long line of cameos in this, and we're just going to run through who has cameos and not necessarily their character names, but I mean, Mr. Raymond Beaumont is seen a lot in this film. So Mr. Robert Englund joins the cast. Yes, Freddy himself in his, actual normal face. Which, I mean, I had forgotten how, kind of weirdly, oddly handsome he was until, I watched Wishmaster again, and I was like, oh, he's kind of cute underneath all that. Then we had Ted Raimi as Ed, and no matter how many times I watch this movie, I still yell at Ed because he's a dummy. And then we have, I wanted to put this in here, we're going to go through all of the little cameo parts, right? So we got Vern Troyer, we got Mr. Buckflower, who also, again, seems to be typecast as, the homeless, man. We got Reggie Bannister. Phantasm. Keep up. Tony Todd. Tom Savini. And, Kane Hodder. Yeah, that's right. All these people make little cameos all throughout the movie. It's pretty great. It's nice. It's like, oh, look. Oh, they're gone. Oh, look. Oh, they're gone. So it's just a little fun surprise. Now, of course, since, Kurtzman is the, director, of course his company, KNB, effects group, worked on the movie. So that's Robert Kurtzman, Greg Nicotero, which I love Greg so much. I think he's just a fantastic makeup artist. And then Howard, guys, I always mess up his name. Bager? I'm so bad at his name. I don't understand why I can't pronounce it. I can't. But so their group, of course, were the ones that did all of the special effects and makeup for this movie, which I think is just fantastic. Like I said, I love the way the Djinn looks. He's fantastic. Snake Man and Skeleton Man effects were amazing. And they did a really fantastic job with all of this. Let's move on to the soundtrack, guys, because again, we've got, we got a heavy hitter. Again, I should say, we talked about them in Hellraiser 3. We're talking about them again in Wishmaster. We have Motorhead with Listen to Your Heart. Now, I had not heard this song prior to, watching the, the film, and I'd forgotten about it since the last time that I, heard the film, and it's really good. It's really good. I really like it. I mean, I like Motorhead anyways, but, this is one of their lesser known songs. It's really pretty good. You should check it out. But then we have, other, sorry guys, we have other bands, such as, Eating Crow, Southpaw, 30 Amp Fuse, Cellophane. They're all really great. And then we also have the Royal Philharmonic Chamber Ensemble. That's a mouthful. But, it's nice to have that little classical edge in a movie that just seems to be like rock and roll forward, right? So with that, all the notes are out of the way. Let's talk about the movie, shall we? So, we start off with the Persian king era, right? So, he basically sounds like he's bored. Which, I mean, there were no, like, TVs or internet or pretty much anything then. So, he makes a wish, and then everybody in his kingdom starts dying horrific deaths. Great. We see one person has this alien thing popping out of their stomach and trying to tear the arm off of a lady. Then we have Mr. Skeleton Man, right? Mr. Skeleton Man with his, his whole body, right? Like, literally his skeleton tears away from his body. And then goes on a murderous rampage. We have Snake Man, who has turned into a snake. By the way, again, he's fantastic looking, absolutely fantastic looking. But we also see the Zoroaster, I guess is how you pronounce his name. Basically, he's like a sorcerer, but we see him working away on some kind of stone, right? And as people are dying, he's trying to get to the Persian king's chamber, his like throne room. There's some back and forth between him and the Persian king and the jinn, and he is able to trap the jinn into this like basically really big ass ruby, right? And so, like, this all happens before we even get the definition of what a jinn is. So Mr. Angus Scrim comes in, and narrates the words on the screen for us so that we don't necessarily have to read. Thank you. But basically telling us that jinns have basically come from angels. Like, they were formed at the same time. Whereas, angels are good, jinns are not so much. They want to grant 3 wishes to whoever releases them, so that then they have the power to, bring in all of their brethren and enslave the human race and take over the world. So, in, all words, just beware the jinn. Present day. We see Mr. Robert Englund and Tom Rainey, their characters on the boat dock. Mr. Beaumont has a very ancient artifact coming his way, and we see the person that is working the lift is drunk as a skunk. So drunk. And Ed, played by Tom, goes over there to yell at him, and what so should happen? The crate falls and kills him. Now see, this is why I yell at him every time that I see this movie, because why would you go run underneath something that is unstable and is like a fucking like statue? Come on now, it's not gonna end good. Anyways, so the statue is broken, and we see that a certain somebody basically stole the ruby out of the statue and went to pawn it off. Now, when they get there, the lady at the counter is like, I think Alex needs to take a look at this. And the owner basically, like, okay, he has no poker face at all. He's like, oh my God. Like, over how much money this thing could be worth. Like, I don't know, maybe play it cool, maybe make them think that it's like nothing, so that you can get, like, you know, I mean, you can get it cheap and sell it high. Stupid. Anyways, so cut to, we see Alexandria, with her best friend. They're playing tennis, and after they're done, he's like, so, how's, you know, dating going? And she's like, ugh, you know, just rotten again. And he, you know, he wants to take her out on a date. He's like, hey, like, you know, let's date. And she's like, I don't want to ruin our friendship. She's like, dates are a dime a dozen. So she just, like, boop, puts him right in the friend zone. Right? So sad. So she goes to work, and she's checking out the stone, and she sees, like, some kind of weird, you know, thing going on in it that she can't really describe. And so she decides to, you know, blow on it, which, I mean, I guess breathed, like, life into it. And then she rubbed it 3 times on her shirt. He didn't appear quite yet, but it stirred him up, you know. Just weird little things. So what does she do? She takes the ruby over to her friend, who works as, I guess, a scientist at the university. I mean, he's at the university. So he's going to run some tests on it and see what he can get. And, you know, she's like, I owe you big. And he's like, how about that dinner? And she just walks off, right? Well, while he's running tests, she is at the girls' basketball game. This lady is busy. She, you know, is like a gym specialist at the, like, local pawn shop, jewelry dealer. I'm still not really for sure what they are. And then she coaches girls basketball. And after a very, like, you know, heartfelt speech to the girls, she starts, like, seeing some things, some visions. It's really weird. And she goes and, you know, she's just like, okay, that was weird, and just shakes it off. But in the meantime, the lab explodes after the lasers do something to the djinn to, you know, release him. And so our first person in, like, the story, other than, like, the people in the Persian King era, to die is, you know, Alex's best friend in the world. The djinn's, like, weird, like, I guess, like, larva stage form, I don't know, basically asks, you know, Jason if he wants him to take his pain away. So what does he do? I mean, Josh. His name is Josh. Anyways, what does he do? He kills him. He's, you know, but his pain doesn't, like, go away, really. It just, like, intensifies before he dies. But then, you know, the djinn is able to get into his bigger form. He's not fully formed yet, but, you know, I mean, he would still scare everybody, you know, in this form. But he goes walking off into the night sky, and as, like, Alexandria can feel what happened to her friend, and she tries to call, and she gets no answer. So she goes down there, and the police are there, and she wants to see him, and, you know, the police are like, do you know him? She's like, he's my best friend. And, you know, while she is there, like, at the cops, we go to the pharmacy where Mr. Buck Flowers, the homeless man, is trying to get people to give him some change. And the pharmacist, Reggie, played by Reggie, doesn't like this, and he is trying to get him to go the fuck away. So they get into an argument and they just yell F you, like, back and forth to each other. It's pretty funny. And the homeless man is like, man, I wish he would die, you know, whatever. And the djinn is right there, and he's like, oh, you know, would you sell your soul for it? He's like, how would you want him to go out? And, you know, the Buck Flowers is just like, girl, cancer, you know, and Reggie gets the fastest killing cancer that I'd ever seen in my life. And dies right there in the pharmacy with Tom Savini looking over him. It's crazy. I'm like, wow, that was the fastest working cancer I'd ever seen in my life. But, so, the djinn now has 2 souls underneath his belt. And Alexandria, who's with the cops, feels what happened to Reggie because she's now, you know, telepathically pretty much connected to the djinn. And she starts screaming and freaking out and runs out. And the police are like, okay, all right, that was weird. So back at Alexandria's house, she's talking to her sister. And her sister's like, do I need to call the psychiatrist again? And she's like, no, this is not like, you know, last time. And, you know, turns out that Alexandria and her family were in a house fire. She was able to save her sister, but not her parents, and she went through a downward spiral about that, and now her sister thinks that she's, like, you know, falling into the same, like, psychotic break that she did before. So it's the next day, right? And the djinn goes back to the university because, you know, why not go back to the scene of your first crime? Sounds like a good thing. To get a face, to get a, you know, get some coverage for that kind of hideous look that, you know, some people might be afraid of. And a med student walks in and sees him, and the djinn asks him, would you like to not see what you're currently seeing, basically? And that student says, yes. And so his eyes get sewn shut. And he starts freaking out. But hey, now the djinn has a disguise where he can just walk around willy-nilly outside without, you know, any problems. So, but Alexandria is still, you know, telepathically connected to this thing. She doesn't know what's going on. She ends up talking to Beaumont about, like, you know, his statue and what he was, you know, trying to get over there. And, you know, he relates her to this woman who is, like, an expert in basically, like, that time period's mythos, right? But, you know, the djinn's looking for her, and he doesn't really have a whole lot of information, you know, about, like, who she is, and, you know, he's just kind of like, oh, you know, whatever. So he goes to the police station, you know, and he's talking to the lead investigator, and he seems really agitated, and, you know, the investigator, you know, is like, well, that guy over there, you know, is is like, whatever, murderer, all this stuff. We haven't been able to pin him down, but, you know, like, I just want to, like, have him dead to rights, right? So the djinn, like, you know, the djinn just, like, you know, makes the guy shoot up the police station, and, ooh, Lord. Anyways, so, you know, the investigator got his wish. He's got him dead to rights, shooting up a bunch of cops. So the djinn takes Alexandria's business card. So now he knows where she works. So he goes there. And at this point I got really irritated, because Kane plays the security guard. And the Jin is like trying to do his like, you know, smart talking ways to get in. And he's like, you know, he's like, what do you want me to do? And Kane just says like that he wants him to go away. Well, that's great. He should have stopped there. Shut up, Kane. Don't say anything else. But then again, I guess that wouldn't move along the plot, right? So as the Jin is walking away, very upset, by the way, and not really under his control. You know what I'm talking about. Kane then says, you would have to go through me, and I'd like to see it. Really? So the Jin turns back around, turns Kane into glass. He melts into the glass door, and the Jin walks through him and shatters. God, Jesus. I don't... Listen. There are times in horror movies that I'm like, common sense, people. Common sense, right? Anyways, the Jin goes to Alex's boss's office, right? And they're talking, and, you know, he's trying to get Alex's information, and, you know, he's like, and the Jin's like, what would you like? And he's like, $1 million. Just $1 million? Oh, okay. So then we see his mom, right? She just signed some life insurance for like $1 million, and then she gets on a plane, and guess what? Plane's barely taken off the ground, and it explodes. Well, there you go. Got your million, but you don't have your mom no more. Y'all, I'm just... Anyways. So... the Jin, for some reason, doesn't go, like, straight after Alex, right? But he goes to that lady that Alex was talking to, goes to her house, in her house, being weird, ends up killing her, of course. She didn't want to see him in his true form, you know? But like Alex had been doing some research, and she realized that he needs like a certain amount of souls before he like basically comes to her, because she's the one that awoken him. But he's basically trying to get himself charged up, you know, so that when he gets Alex to do what he wants her to do, he can then summon, you know, all hell, right? So she goes over to the lady's apartment, and the Jin is, you know, acting like her, has disguised himself as the lady. And like while they're talking, the lady keeps asking, like, you know, are you thirsty? Can I get you something to drink? Are you cold? Do I need to turn up the air? And she's like, why do you keep trying to do things for me? And that right there should have been your first guess that this isn't the lady, right? Anyways, so it takes a while before she realizes that it's him. And like her first wish is that she wants to see who he truly is. And so he shows her his true form. And then something happens to where they get like inside of the ruby, where he has now all of the people that he has taken their soul. Which is... they're pretty messed up. They're like almost like Cenobite level of torture in this ruby, right? Maybe not like as much, right? But so Alex starts running off, and then there's like this weird like turtle dog. Yeah, that's the best way to it like has the head, like it has the head of a turtle but the body of a dog with like no skin. right? It's kind of weird. It starts chasing her, and then she, you know, basically wishes that she'd be back in her apartment, and she is. And she gets a phone call from the Jinn, and he's like, you can't escape, you know. And she's been having these nightmares of like her sister being trapped in like this like, you know, window with fire, and she's been having all these nightmares related to, you know, the Jinn. But there's gonna be a final, you know, little show off with them, right? And she's remembering what she had told her girls, you know, like staying calm in the face of, you know, of pressure. You know, it's only you and the ball, like block everything else out, right? So during her last dance, you can see her like, or sorry, hold on. It's not even their last dance yet. She goes to Beaumont's place because he's having a party where Mr. Tony Todd lets her in, right? Kind of, I mean, he doesn't really want to, but she gets around it. But then Tony Todd and, oh, his name is Valentine. Sorry. I tried to do like my best like Tony Todd voice there, you know, but his voice is way too, you know, deep and gravelly for me to pull off that well. But they have like a show off, you know, and again, like just don't say the wrong words. Just screw yourself over. So, I mean, Tony Todd's end up like Houdini, straight jacketed into a box of water. And the Jinn gets into the party. So, they're both in the party now. And Alex is trying to find her sister because that's where her sister went. But then she says that the Jinn is there and he's talking to Beaumont, and you know, like Beaumont says something about wanting to have the, you know, party of the century. And then the Jinn hears a girl say that, oh, you can see right through me. So the Jinn turns her into glass. Well, probably more like crystal. And then makes her explode, and there's shards everywhere, and like statues of Beaumont start coming to life, and people start getting killed. It's like the Persian king situation all over again. And so Alex is like running through like Beaumont's place. She ends up in the like trophy room. The Jinn is there. He's got some like terracotta warrior situations with him. And he's backed her up against a corner and is trying to get her to make her final, you know, wish. And he's like pressuring her, and she's just going back through what she read over the last few days. And she comes up with, I wish that so-and-so had not been drinking on the job like 2 days ago. Okay, so the Jinn could have been like, haha, and found a loophole, right? Right? He's found loopholes in everybody else's stuff so far. No, not hers. So he gets, you know, trapped back into the gym because the events that prior never happened. And so the statue never was broken. Mr. Beaumont put the statue in his room on display. His, like, you know, piece de resistance. You know what I'm saying? And her best friend is alive again. She comes on to him and talks about dinner. He hits her back with like, maybe a baseball game and a hot dog. Right? And she's like, oh, she winks at him and he's like, oh, okay. Got it. And then, it's over. So, I mean, like I said, there are a couple places that I'm like, but I mean, that's in a lot of horror movies. You're just like, just keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything. But you got to advance the plot. It's like when people run upstairs in a horror movie, you're like, come on, dude, what are you doing? But overall, it's a really good movie. And, it's on Tubi for free. I plug Tubi a lot. I love that thing though. I love it. I mean, we got great horror movies. I mean, we've got great, movies in general. I mean, not even just horror. And then we've got Glow. I feel like one of the Glow ladies right now with this makeup. It's totally 80s, right? Right? Okay, that leads me, totally 80s. Haha, segue, leads me to our next movie. So, I mean, it was done in 2018, but it's set in the 80s. The cover is very neon and fun looking. It's called Skeletons in the Closet. I'm excited. I found it on Vudu, watched the trailer, and was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing next. And guys, hardly ever do I know what I'm doing next. Sometimes I have to have my cameraman, producer, director, / husband. He wears a lot of hats. I have to get him to pick sometimes for me. Or, I draw out of a hat. But this one, it was a slam dunk. So, next week, Skeletons in the Closet. I've had fun tonight, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you next Saturday. Bye.